Welcome to the Do Good Work podcast, where do good work is a way of living, where we highlight the hidden inner beauty behind the struggle to achieve a new level of excellence in all areas of your life. Today, we are talking to Kris Putnam-Walkerly. For over 20 years, top global philanthropies, ultra high net worth donors, celebrity activists, foundations, wealth advisors, and Fortune 500 companies have sought after Kris's philanthropic advisory services to dramatically increase the clarity, speed, impact, and joy of their giving. As a sought-after philanthropy advisor, expert, and award-winning author, she's helped over 100 foundations and philanthropists strategically allocate and assess over $500 million in grants and gifts. Wonderful. Well, Kris, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much, Raul, for having me.
Kris, we're going to talk about, your new book, but also discuss there's two sides of the coin when it comes to giving, the ones who actually give from donors and those who receive and put those gifts into action. But I kind of want to start with definitions just to make it a little bit clearer. And I love the title of the book. Why is there delusional altruism?
Yes, it's a provocative title intentionally. And, I've been advising philanthropists of all types for over 20 years. And, I've come to recognize that while they are genuine in their altruism, they really want to make a difference, change the world, help their community. They're often getting in their own way. And they're actually preventing themselves from having the impact that they seek. And so, this happens in a variety of ways that I write about in the book, but it's really kind of clinging on to misguided beliefs and blind spots that often they don't recognize they even have. And so I wanted to write the book to help donors and funders see how they were making these common mistakes and then give very practical advice as to what they can do differently. So delusional doesn't mean crazy in a sense. It just means, wanting to change the world, but getting in your own way.
So wanting the intentions, but taking different actions that don't actually support those true intentions. What are some of the common pitfalls? Let's talk about this on the first side of the coin, the donors side. What are some of the common pitfalls that you see there?
Yeah, there's so many. One of the main ones really is a scarcity mindset. It's actually the first chapter in the book, which is called "You Save Money, but on All the Wrong Things." And so, it's interesting because one equates wealth with abundance, right? So you think that a high net worth donor, a foundation, a large corporation would be very abundant in their giving, but they're actually experiencing more of a scarcity mindset. And by that, I mean, they believe that by kind of maintaining a Spartan operation, somehow that equates to delivering greater value into the community or to the issue they're trying to address. But the reality is that just like in business, nonprofit organizations require resources in order to be effective. And, if you think about it from an investment in the nonprofit that you're supporting perspective, if there's an organization doing great work, whatever it is, ending homelessness or access to high quality preschool or supporting mental health, whatever the issue might be, you think they're doing great work. Well, don't you want them to have top talent, great financial management systems, a fabulous board of directors, the ability to evaluate themselves and learn what's working, what's not working, the ability to raise funds and communicate effectively, the technology they need to do their work well? Well, of course you do, right? Like you want them to be as successful and well-equipped as possible so they can have the greatest impact. But too often what funders do instead is they hold back resources and they don't allow their funds to pay for any of those things. Like those things cost money. It costs money to make sure you have the best financial management. It costs money to recruit and train the right board so that they're there for you and can really support and steward the organization. And so just, when you think about it as a business owner, we recognize the importance of investing in ourselves, investing for growth, investing in our technology, investing in our marketing, research and development, all these kinds of things. Well, nonprofits need that kind of investment too. And I think that's one of the ways that donors hold back and have that scarcity mindset But even if you take money out of the equation, a lot of donors have a scarcity mindset. It's really just a mindset. It's in their mind. And so part of it is even thinking that they're like too small to make a difference. Like, sure, they have millions to give away, but they don't have billions to give away. And so, they might look at a big problem like, inequitable education, which we've all seen for sure in the past year, and think, well, how could I possibly make a difference? We only give away $2 million a year, only in quotes, right? Because that's a lot of money. And so it's a scarcity mindset that kind of holds them back and keeps them thinking small, whereas an abundance mindset might say, hey, yeah, we only quote unquote have $2 million to give away. But if we leverage our resources with others, if we partner with the school district or the county or other funders and donors in our community, we actually could tackle, education in a much stronger, more robust way.
In making a dent. Is this just by being more strategic in the way that you give, or is this also just getting over the hump of, okay, the project or the nonprofit that I'm giving to has a 7% overhead cost, and that number scares me because I don't know how those funds are gonna, be utilized? Is it that, or is it working with them and say, how can we actually tackle this strategically with the funds I'm going to give you? Is it being more hands-on, or just being have more oversight, or what's like that transition point?
Yeah, I actually think it's more, it's embracing that abundance mindset, but it's like an abundance of trust, for example. And so how do you, have build a trusting relationship with the nonprofits that you're supporting, with the confidence and belief that, again, if you've seen they have a good track record and the organization, well, my feeling is trust them to know what their needs are in the community. Trust them to be able to look ahead and see challenges coming down the pike that they need to address or work around, or opportunities that they need to seize quickly, and they need the resources to be able to do that. And so to me, it's less about people talk about being a strategic funder versus a responsive funder. And a way to think about that is, a responsive funder might say, hey, here we are in San Diego or Midland, Texas, wherever we are, and there's all kinds of needs, and we want to support all kinds of causes, arts, education, health, whatever, which is great. That's great. And then strategic often is thinking about well, maybe we're going to focus what kind of impact we want to have as a company, as a family, as a business, a donor, and then, what are the right strategies and tactics that will help us achieve that particular outcome. But to me, that's less important than having a mindset that, in order for any of these organizations to be successful, they need the resources to do that adequately, right? And when donors kind of hamstring nonprofits by saying, oh, you can only have, 5%
for this allocation.
Overhead,
yeah.
Or we don't allow any money for overhead. Or I've seen donors say, we'll fund the project, but we won't actually allow our funds to pay for the personnel to run the project. We'll fund your tutoring program, but we won't actually pay the tutors' salaries, which, makes no sense, because how can you do anything effectively? And so, and what that does is it forces the nonprofits to run around trying to collect funding from different sources and piece together the money they need to be able to run the programs. Well, it's really kind of a colossal waste of time of usually the executive director, who should be instead planning, thinking, building relationships, looking ahead, pivoting, et cetera. And so, managing the organization and growing the organization. And so it really just, again, it's that delusion. You think you're being mindful with your money. You think you're being a good steward or, efficient somehow with your resources, but you're actually holding the nonprofit back and preventing them from being as impactful as they can be.
Yeah, you're looking at efficiency and then not seeing the fulfillment of the effectiveness of the funds. And you're making the case on the other side saying, hey, you need, that's a perfect example. We'll fund the projects, we'll fund the books, the schools, but we won't pay for the tutor salaries. Okay, now that's putting more strain. And I think it's going to have both dynamics. And one of the key things that I think that you mentioned is relationship, having that relationship and that built trust to know that, okay, if I give you, let's just say an absurd number, 10% overhead for you to pay for this. Like, I know that you're going to use it prudently based on the trust that I have. And even for like as a business owner in your community, you could be looking at how can I partner with, specific, causes that my team, that our mission aligns with the business and our culture. And we can have not only like a giving account or just giving in general, but also opportunities to actually show up, to actually volunteer, opportunities to build relationships with those actual institutions or nonprofits, because that not only supports, the business culture, the team, seeing that your work actually makes an impact, but also for you as the business owner being like a prudent steward of the funds and making sure like, okay, I trust this person. I see how they're working. I trust their executive vision, so on and so forth. So it's building trust both ways and making that case. So I have an interesting question for you, Kriss, and we're going to shift gears a little bit here, but I'd like to dive into your experience. And so you've worked with a whole broad spectrum, from Fortune 500s to wealth advisors to even, celebrity like donors. How do you walk them through, and excuse the explanation, but how do you walk them through the sales process to see an opportunity and actually give and write that check? Because that's like a very elaborate relationship-based negotiation and sales process. So can you walk us through some of that psychology?
Sure. Yes. And I do work with a wide range of clients. So it's Fortune 500 companies like Smuckers, for example, and families, family foundations, community foundations, family offices, all of it. And, my clients all of them have, a genuine desire to make a difference, a genuine belief that, with their philanthropy and with their know-how, and certainly for companies, perhaps with their product and their employees, they can really collectively help make a difference and make an impact. But to me, it's all focused on, thinking about, at the same time, they might be stuck, right? They might feel like, yeah, we have resources, we have money, we have our talent, but we're stuck somewhere. We're stuck because we care about all kinds of issues and we don't know which one to focus on. Or we want to start a foundation, but we don't know how. Or, gosh, we just sold our business. We now have more money than we ever thought we'd have. So now what do we do? And what kind of impact do we want to have? And so to me, it's more helping them get clarity on what do they want? What is that change they want to see? Or if they could get clarity on what they want to accomplish, like 2 years from now, how will things be different? And really help them to envision that. It could be, gosh, I'd finally feel confident that I'm allocating my resources to what's more important to me. Or like I figured out how to involve my kids and my grandkids in our family philanthropy. Or our company is aligned, like the mission of our company and our purpose is aligned with our giving and our corporate values. And gosh, we're actually having an impact. 2 years down the road, I could see like people's lives are changed as a result. And, you get excited about that. And then we talk about, well, where are you today? Like, great. So what's holding you back from achieving that kind of vision of where you're headed? And often it's feeling stuck. It's just not knowing. It's feeling overwhelmed, overwhelmed by the world's problems, overwhelmed by the choices of nonprofits you could support, overwhelmed knowing, well, what are the best practices and right ways to approach this? Or, feeling fearful. And I write about this in the book. I think fear and overwhelm actually hold many donors back and prevent them from having an impact. Some donors genuinely support a cause and they're fearful of like coming out publicly in support of that cause.
Oh, wow. So others the PR might side
disagree with them and publicly, through social media and other channels, like chastise them. So they are fearful, literally, of being public about their giving. So we talk about, kind of what's the challenges of that, and then, just outline options for them. I do a lot of coaching and advising of my clients to be there to help them clarify their goals and then help them stay accountable through weekly coaching calls and, full day sessions. I do a lot of strategy work with clients, helping them to develop either their full-on strategic plan or implement that plan or develop a giving plan. And so, I guess the sales process is, to me, it isn't really, I don't think of it as sales. I really think of it as service because, gosh, if I can help a funder to, effectively give their money away to make a difference in the world, then think of that ripple effect on not just them, their company, their family, their organization, but on the communities they're serving. And if they can be intentional and abundant, in their approach, then it truly can make a difference. And that's what really gets me excited.
That's amazing. And I like that you focus on not only the current situation, but the future situation of like where they want to be in their impact. Can you talk about maybe some of that structure and thinking? Because I'm like, first things come to mind, like if I want to start this, it's going to have to be either a foundation. Is it a separate entity? How are the tax benefits? How do we have the team involved? Does it align with the culture? How do I go public with my PR? How do I make sure that it's safe with HR and stuff like that? So it's all these different components. Can you walk us through maybe like a tactical, like step-by-step or briefly, just a brief overview, maybe 30,000 foot view of, as a business owner, if you're looking to do this or you're currently do this, just to make sure that you have everything aligned correctly, that you're making the largest impact that you can be making and not missing out on, things that you oversaw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So actually what I do is I start with the transformation instead of the transaction, meaning instead of kind of the tactics or transaction of, do I start a foundation or how do I give the money away or who do, what staff member do I involve in all of this? To me, that comes second. What comes first is clarifying your goals. What are you trying to accomplish with your philanthropy? What are the issues or causes that you care about? What kind of, if you're a business, what kind of impact do you want to be having in the community? And, how does that align with your products, your services? So like, let's just take Smucker as an example. What many people don't know is or realize is that a lot of Smucker's revenue actually comes from pet food and pet products. They have acquired a few different pet companies, pet food companies over the years. And so consequently, one of their giving priority areas is around, bringing together like pets and people to thrive together. And how do you support, helping like homeless pets find homes and things like that. So part of it is thinking about, what do you care about? What's important to you? And how do you, how is that maybe meaningful either for your business or that, or it could be your geographic footprint. Some corporate business donors think about not necessarily one issue, but we have operations, we have our headquarters and, plants in different locations. We want to give back to those communities. So I want them to have clarity first on, what's the issues and causes and maybe communities they care about. And then what are the best ways for them to have an impact in that area? I think what comes, much further down the road is kind of the how. I like to focus first on the what and only then the how. So, for example, starting a foundation is a big deal. That's not necessarily the right solution of the, how the mechanics of giving the money away, because you're creating a nonprofit 501c3 organization that requires, care and feeding. And you have to manage that. And not everyone wants to manage another organization. And so there's other alternatives. I mean, like there's donor advised funds is a kind of a charitable checking account alternative that's much easier to manage. Or, like some major donors like Mackenzie Scott, who is the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos of Amazon. She gave away over, I believe, $5 billion in 2020 without any foundation. She identified through a variety of ways organizations she wanted to support and gave them checks or wired them money or whatever the mechanism was. So there's lots of ways to do that. And then kind of the staffing, the issues of like, because part of it too is, if you know that you care about 3 organizations and that's what you want to support, well, it's pretty easy to do that, right? But if you want to change policy in state education, right, that's a different endeavor. And so you might need more people or experts or consultants to kind of help you think through that. So But again, it's all focused first on what are you trying to accomplish.
And then the transaction comes out. That makes a lot more sense. Look at the strategy first, make sure that it makes sense and align with the company. Then the how is secondary. The how, we'll get to the how, but it's more, does it align with you, your team, your social, like your, I like the geo footprint angles, like making sure, like if you have multiple offices, how are you supporting those different offices, especially now with remote, like teams all over the world, like how do we support and be able to align with our global team?
Yes.
No, I love that, Kriss. For all of our listeners out there, Kriss, what would be, as they pick up this book and they go through it, what would be your goal, like a number one goal takeaway for them to just like when they finish reading it, what would be your goal for, like, at least they got this takeaway?
That's a great question. I mean, I would say I would want the book to inspire them to give, but really kind of change how they give, and be more mindful, I think, especially of the what, that what question of what do I want to accomplish with my giving? And then take that first step. I mean, the very last chapter of the book is all about take action. Mm-hmm. And rather than feeling overwhelmed by the end of reading it, I want people to kind of pick the one thing they want to do. What's that one nugget, that one learning of what they want to change to improve? But I think getting clarity on, your strategy, your goals is really the most important, because everything else becomes more obvious. Like in business, when we are clear on what we're trying to accomplish with our business, we have a clear strategy, we know our goals, then we can figure out how to make that happen.
I love that. Kriss, for all of our listeners out there, what's the best place for people to pick up your book? And thank you for this episode.
Yeah, well, I'd like to suggest two things. So one is speaking of strategy, I do have a free guide that I think will be really useful for all your listeners. It's called 8 Things Every Philanthropist Can Do to Change the World, Even When the World Keeps Changing. And you can download it if you go to 8things.org. It's a free download, and it's a real practical 8 steps. And it really speaks to the reality that we live in a time of disruption and constant change, and it can feel hard for all of us to identify our goals and our strategy, because we think, well, gosh, the world's going to change again and again and again in the next few months. What's the point, but the reality is the world is always changing. And so, yes, we can plan ahead even in these uncertain times. So again, 8things.org, a really useful guide for anyone. And then that is on my website, so you can find me there. And then the book, of course, is called Delusional, Altruism. And so it's available on Amazon and all the usual retailers.
Wonderful. So we'll put the link to the book in the show notes, and the URL for the download is 8 things, plural.org. Well, Kriss, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Hope you enjoyed our conversation here with Kriss. Some of the key things, I have 3 key takeaways that I really liked is, looking at the way that you give. And I know that sometimes, like me personally, even looking, I don't want to give to overhead or operations, but now it makes a lot more sense, because as a business owner and when you're running companies and you're running teams, like you need to have top talent, top overhead, and make sure that not overhead being so expensive, but making sure that you're feeding the team and the company with the right resources and tools in order to get the job done. So I like the fact that we focused on that from the nonprofit sector, and being able to identify and not see overhead as like this really bad word, and making sure that the overhead is being done properly. We can analyze either income statements from these nonprofits, but also even talk and build relationship, especially if they're local in town, or if you're a common donor, like you donate frequently and donate large amounts, you can have those conversations, or have them take you out for dinner, or you take them out for a Zoom call, whatever it is, to build that relationship. And I really like that, because that's the second point that I got out of this, is looking at how can you, like as a business owner or entrepreneur, or even as someone who gives, how can we strategically give or create a quote unquote portfolio of foundations that create an impact and align with the work that we do or the work that we care about. I think that's really important, especially if you run a team and you're going to add this to your giving arm under your company. It's making sure that it aligns with your whole team, your culture, and with the product, and that it makes sense. Because you have to decide, am I going to go public with this? Am I not going to go public with this? But I think it clears up a lot of things to think strategically first, build relationship. And then the last thing is, when you're thinking strategically, I liked of creating the alignment of your causes. If you have a geo footprint, as well as with your product. And I think those subtle shifts, those changes, those are the big takeaways that I got from this episode. And, as you're growing your company or as you're working in a company, I think it's important to be able to see like, hey, I can give. And I think that's a very beautiful part of life, that life is giving. And I know it's like sometimes you can't give too much or too little, but as long as you can give a little bit, I think it's good to be able to see what kind of impact you can make, but also, life's gift. So it's good to be able to give back and provide for others who may not have, the ability or may not be at the top geographical locations that you are. So that's my input from this. And I really appreciated Kriss sharing her insights of over 20 years of experience.